A little over a week ago, the 2024 MLB Amateur Draft took place as the first featured event to All-Star Weekend in Arlington, Texas. Over 600 players out of the high school and college level were selected among 20 rounds across 3 days of drafting. For the New York Mets, this draft created some high anticipation, with 2024 being their first draft under their first ever president of baseball operations, David Stearns. And to sweeten the deal, Stearns brought on one of the most coveted scouts in the business, Kris Gross, who is one of the main architects behind forming the Houston Astros dynasty core of stars, from Alex Bregman to Carlos Correa to George Springer and Kyle Tucker. With the star-studded duo of Stearns and Gross, the expectation is high to keep loading up the Mets farm system and develop talent going forward. And today, it is time to review every selection made by the Mets in the 2024 draft. But before we do that, I do want to remind everyone to hit that subscribe button if you have not already and turn on those post notifications to not miss the live recording of the Mets Weekly Podcast following every single series of games during the regular season. We also have some fun stuff planned for this year's MLB trade deadline, which will be in about a week on July 30th, so make sure to stay tuned for that announcement when it comes. And for that eventual announcement, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features my co-host Frank About Sports and his instant reactions following every single Mets game, titled The Mets Frankly Postgame. And on this video, make sure to hit the like button, comment down below your thoughts and opinions on the Mets draft selections last week. Now, this year, the Mets were slotted into the 19th overall pick by a lottery system, which was originally the 9th overall pick, but due to the Mets being over the 4th luxury tax threshold for another season, they dropped once again 10 slots in the MLB draft order. So for those of you wondering why a 75-win team in 2023 is picking 19th instead of in the top 10, there's your answer. Now, I just want to remind everybody how this rundown is going to work. I will do a full-on analysis / rundown on every selection made by the Mets in this draft. I will also be grading these picks on a letter scale based on my opinion from overall talent, slot value, and how well I think that they would translate to the major leagues if they pan out. Now, I'm fully aware that maybe some of these takes might not age well, but that's part of the fun. With that being said, make sure to let me know what you agree with and disagree with in the comments. I am sure you will. So without further ado, let's review all 20 draft selections by the 2024 New York Mets. Starting us off with the 19th overall pick, the Mets selected Carson Benge, an outfielder from Oklahoma State University. Benge is 21 years old, 6'1", 184 pounds, and for those of you who follow me on X, we are not the same person. We just have the same first name, and I still have people in my DMs and mentions congratulating me. It's kind of funny, but I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Anyways, Benge began his college career as a two-way player before undergoing Tommy John surgery in 2022, limiting his pitching sample in 2023. Although scouts do consider Benge a legitimate prospect on both sides of the ball, projected as a first-round hitting talent, but a third-round pitching talent. But as a left-handed bat, Benge has one of the best combinations of contact and power, landing in the top 10% in quality of contact metrics, exit velocity, max exit velocity, hard hit rate, and zone contact rate among Division I hitters in 2024. One thing he really excels at is using the opposite field, but he did a way better job turning and lifting on more pitches with his plus bat speed this season. There are some slight concerns regarding launch angle issues, as he tends to hit the ball on the ground at a 44% rate and registered just a 28.3% sweep spot percentage in the 39th percentile, which is pretty telling by his swing that explodes through the zone, but the barrel window might be his only uphill climb of development. But nonetheless, Benge doesn't chase that much, he walks a lot, and controls the zone with a bat at elite percentiles that can help him register better quality of contact going forward. As for his other tools, Benge has borderline above average speed at his best as a solid defender in right field with a plus arm, covering plenty of ground with a very quick first step as an overall great athlete. On the other side of the ball, Benge is a serviceable control pitcher with a fastball that touches 96, an average slider, and a recently developed changeup. Although he prefers to hit, Benge has stated that he'd love to be a two-way player to start his pro career, but the decision is still yet to be determined. But reportedly, as a position player, the Mets have had their eye on Benge since David Stearns entered Queens. And Kris Gross stated that the Mets internally believe this kid can be a future 5-tool star in the majors. Now, I personally think that this was a great pick, and it's not just because of the awesome first name that he has, but because of the overall impact tools that this kid has that are not only seasoned deep in the college level, but still has room to grow physically, preferably filling into his 6'1" frame. Now, this was definitely the safer pick compared to my top wish list player, Vance Honeycutt. Not my first choice at slot 19, but I understand why the Mets went this direction. A high floor hitter, great athlete with plus tools. With the 46th overall pick, the Mets selected Jonathan Santucci, a left-handed pitcher out of Duke University. Santucci is 21 years old, 6'2", 205 pounds, and a repeatable motion southpaw with plus pitch shape. Although his stuff isn't household explosive, his high release height over 5 feet gives him tons of deception to miss bats. With that release height, his fastball sits at 93 to 94 and tops 97, with over 18 inches of induced vertical break and 13 inches of arm side run. That registered a 29.8% whiff rate in the 93rd percentile among Division I pitchers. This tunnels well with his occasional high 80s changeup with over 11 inches of vertical separation from his four-seam. But his best pitch is his low 80s wipeout slider with huge glove side break that registered in the top 10% among Division I pitchers in whiff rate, chase rate, and called strike whiff percentage. Although his pitchability tools are there, Santucci does have a bit of control issues with serviceable command of the zone, walking 14% of batters in 58 innings pitched last season. The main pinpoint in his development will be his ability to throw more competitive pitches, but his repeatable delivery could help him spark above average command going forward, as scouts have projected him as a potential mid-rotation starter in the majors. There's also some injury concern after an injury-riddled sophomore year, where Santucci underwent surgery to remove bone chips in his left elbow and had a rib injury that sidelined him for the last month of the 2024 season. Before the injury, he was expected to be a potential top 15 pick, so to have him fall all the way to slot 46 is fantastic value. And I think that this was a really good floor pick considering the safe upside his stuff possesses. Great pitch shape and physical deception with plus swing and miss stuff that can be molded into a good major league starting pitcher. 82nd overall pick, the Mets selected Nate Dohm, a right-handed pitcher from Mississippi State University. Dohm is 21 years old, 6'4", 210 pounds, and after spending his freshman year at Ball State as a reliever, Dohm grew some first-round traction after getting off to a hot start, but his season would be derailed by a forearm strain, missing more than a month of action. But when Dohm is healthy, he's displayed some really impressive stuff, headlined by his glove-side heavy fastball that sits at 94 to 95, tops 97, with 18 inches of induced vertical break, registering a 32.5% chase rate with heavy rise through the upper third of the zone. His slider has a late arm side cut, which is very useful against left-handed hitters, landing in the 98th percentile for called strike whiff percentage among Division I pitchers. He also mixes in a low 80s curveball with extra late drop that registered top 10% swing and miss numbers in 2024. His fourth pitch is a work in progress changeup that he's lacked physical feel for, but still has plus fate. And with his ability to locate his fastball, there might be some room to develop a cutter to fill in that horizontal separation from his slider. In terms of location, Dohm attacks hitters better than almost anyone in this draft, striking out 33% of batters and walking just 2.7% across 29.1 innings pitched in 2024. His plus control and fluid command has led scouts to believe in a possible mid-rotation starter ceiling going forward. Now, with his strong 6'4" frame and repeatable mechanics, I do believe that you could see a potential velocity jump in the coming years, perceived by his well above average extension. Projected to go in the 4th to 5th round of the draft, Dohm was definitely an overslot selection, but that seemed to be more of a projection based on his health and not ability, because this is one of my favorite picks of this draft class, based on his stable tools that can produce volume as a starter. Not a frontline arm, but a great floor to develop from. With the 111th overall pick, the Mets selected Eli Serrano, an outfielder out of North Carolina State University. Serrano is 21 years old, 6'5", 201 pounds, with a very lanky frame, but with a very smooth left-handed swing. Many scouts have been really impressed by Serrano's bat-to-ball skills, but he has disappointed in the power department. Although he was projected as a 25 to 30 home run bat out of high school, he just hasn't grown into his raw strength as expected. With quality of contact metrics registering in Division I's average percentiles, Serrano still has been able to produce solid exit velocities, along with his hard hit rate landing in the 78th percentile in 2024. His hit tool metrics placed him in the top 10% in zone contact rate and whiff rate, but there is room for his batted ball numbers to improve regarding to launch angle, as he does hit the ball on the ground a lot and struggles to pull and lift line drives and fly balls. The key to his development seems to be unlocking power that he still has room to grow into with his 6'5" frame. Even with that tall frame, he does run fairly well, but to the average scale. He does move well in the outfield, improving his range in center field in 2024 with plus instincts as a defender. However, scouts have profiled him in the corner, preferably left field, with his below average to average arm strength. Out of all 20 selections the Mets made in this draft, this one is probably my least favorite by a margin. I understand the physical upside, but for what he was projected to rank, this one just seemed like a reach. Could it possibly be to save money with slot value? Maybe. But Serrano feels like a really big developmental prospect that can only make an impact if rapid adjustments are made already at age 21. I'm not writing him off by any means, because the upside is well known, but it's really hard to see him getting there with what he is presented at face value at the college level. It really does make me wonder about the internal interest of this pick, but I could be wrong. With the 144th overall pick, the Mets selected Trey Snyder, a shortstop out of Liberty North High School in Missouri. Snyder is 18 years old, 6'1", 197 pounds, and as a University of Tennessee commit, Snyder has already been scouted as a very steady right-handed bat who makes consistent contact with great pitch selection. Although he hasn't shown that much power yet, Snyder gained some strength over this past year, which has helped him to register better exit velocities in 2024 and on the Showcase Combine circuit. With a quick bat and short stroke, most scouts have believed that he has 20 home run ceiling, but some do not. But his overall quality of contact is still fairly impressive at age 18. Defensively, Snyder's time at shortstop is still fairly unknown, with room to grow into his frame, possibly moving him to third base down the line. With a plus arm and hands on the left side of the diamond, a move to the hot corner would make a lot more sense regarding his average speed while gaining muscle. Coming out of high school, these selections are always a wait and see, with the first few years of their development being very crucial to adjustment. As one of the 3 high schoolers selected by the Mets in this draft, Snyder is definitely the one that I believe could translate well to the upper levels of the minor leagues. With tons of room to refine solid foundational tools, this was a very promising pick. The major league ceiling is still unknown at age 18, as it usually is, but there is tons to work with in that regard. With the 173rd overall pick, the Mets selected Corey Collins, a first baseman out of the University of Georgia. Collins is 22 years old, 6'3", 236 pounds, and one of the loudest left-handed bats in this entire draft. Collins is a huge pull side hitter with a short and quick swing that allows him to prioritize quality of contact, landing in the top 10% of every category from hard hit rate, average exit velocity, max exit velocity, pulled line drive rate, and pulled fly ball rate among Division I hitters. But Collins is also a very disciplined and poised hitter, with his plus pitch recognition against secondary stuff, swinging at just 17.8% of pitches out of the zone last season, and walking 22.7% of the time. And as an extra nugget of information, he was hit by 28 pitches this season, so he's a med all right. Defensively, Collins was originally a catcher, but he really lacked the receiving and blocking skills that led to him transitioning to first base. While he's not great at the position, his plus arm and agile balance does give him some room to improve as an overall defender. His overall versatility as a player is probably what has really limited him in overall prospect rankings, and with below average speed, the corner outfield is less of a possibility going forward. But nonetheless, Collins is a legitimate all-around bat with quite the major league production ceiling if he pans out. This was easily my favorite pick of the draft. We all know how much I love power hitters that don't chase and prioritize quality of contact. This is the type of hitter that has really had a big internal lack recently in the Mets system, and it's good to see them go in a more sustainable direction of hitting tools. This is one of those players where the bat can make up for a majority of weaknesses, and it will be interesting to see how he instantly fits into the Mets minor league system at age 22. Although this was the projected slot pick, I really think the Mets got quite a steal here in the 6th round. With the 203rd overall pick, the Mets selected Will Watson, a right-handed pitcher out of the University of Southern California. Watson is 21 years old, 6'1", 180 pounds, and a converted starter over the past 2 seasons. As an average-sized right-hander, Watson is a very horizontally enhanced arm with a 3-pitch mix. His fastball sits in the mid-90s and tops 97 miles an hour, with over 17 inches of induced vertical break and loads of glove side movement. He complements that with a low 80s cutting arm slider and a plus changeup with over 20 inches of horizontal break. With some control issues and the horizontal separation between his fastball and slider, there is a clear need for a cutter to be added to Watson's arsenal, with his inability to throw his slider for strikes and get chases against left-handed hitters. But Watson does miss a lot of bats and prevents hard contact, allowing just 3 home runs in 85 career college innings. With a clean vertical approach angle on his fastball and changeup, Watson has a very solid foundation to develop more swing and miss stuff as opposed to heavy contact management. It all really depends on his ability to throw strikes, put away more batters, and limit traffic on the base paths. With a limited transition from the bullpen, the workload is definitely going to be an area to keep an eye on as he develops through the Mets minor league system. I'm very neutral on this pick because I do expect Watson to get a chance in the majors, but it just seems like a very incomplete pitcher for his current age. As an expected underslot signing, it still is decent value, but internally, Watson is the type of pitcher that could fall behind if remote and routine adjustments aren't made in the beginning of his minor league career. With the 233rd overall pick, the Mets selected Ryan Lambert, a right-handed pitcher out of the University of Oklahoma. Lambert is 21 years old, 6'3", 222 pounds, and from a strong and physical frame, Lambert is one of the hardest throwing pitchers of this entire draft. His four-seam fastball sits at 96 to 97 and tops 102 miles an hour, with over 19 inches of induced vertical break and glove side cut. He polarizes this pitch with a power action arm side sweeper, but has topped 94 miles an hour. He bridges these two weapons with a low 90s cutter that has solid approach angles, and with an over-the-top high release height, Lambert is still very raw in terms of pitch ability. As his swing, miss, and take rates on his secondary stuff all tended to land in the bottom 15% among Division I pitchers. With his explosiveness that comes with patented control issues, the reliever upside still is massive, but it might take a little bit longer for Lambert to apply it. With a very short extension for deception, Lambert's mechanics do seem to be in need of an adjustment with how much stress he puts on his shoulder and upper arm. There isn't much health concern from past college seasons, but a pitcher who throws this hard at that motion is susceptible to fatigue no matter how you spin it. Although he's far from a finished college product, I absolutely love the upside of this pick. It's not only the fact that you can't teach 100 plus gas, but that his untapped skills and weaknesses have tons of room to improve as he goes through the Mets minor league system. With Lambert's fluid command, his ability to throw more strikes with an explosive foundation of pitches has quite the major league ceiling going forward. Quite an enticing arm if he pans out. With the 263rd overall pick, the Mets selected Jaxon Jelkin, a right-handed pitcher from the University of Houston. Jelkin is 21 years old, 6'5", 190 pounds, and a 5-pitch kitchen sink style arm. Before transferring from Nebraska to Houston to be a full-time starter, Jelkin underwent Tommy John surgery in 2023. Back to the mound in mid-2024, he's showcased a fastball that sits 93 to 94 and tops 97 miles an hour with over 15 inches of horizontal movement. But he's most known for his breaking stuff, featuring a 2,900 RPM slider that fools left-handed hitters and a low 80s curveball. Even with some inconsistent shape, both breaking balls landed in the top 5% in whiff rate among Division I pitchers. He rounds out his fastball with a plus changeup in the mid-80s that has similar horizontal specs to his sinker with over 17 inches of glove side run. Although Jelkin normally walks very few batters, inconsistent pitch tunneling has led him to struggle to miss bats at times. More so with his fastball registering just a 15.7% whiff rate in 2024. With some overall health concerns, growing into his 6'5" frame and adding muscle seems to be the essential key to Jelkin's development. Not to mention the possibility of him adding velocity in the future with more extension that landed in the below average percentiles for his respective size in 2024. It could take some time for him to grab his footing in the minor leagues with his erratic tendencies and injury concerns, but he still has a high enough floor to be molded into a good starter at the pro level. I think the selection was good value for the slot, as some potential organizational depth down the line. Some scouts are higher on Jelkin than others, mainly based on their level of hope for pitchability and physical fill-out. But nonetheless, only time will tell. With the 293rd overall pick, the Mets selected Brendan Girton, a right-handed pitcher out of the University of Oklahoma. Girton is 22 years old, 6'1", 217 pounds, and a transfer from Texas Tech. Girton really struggled to grab consistency as a starter and reliever, with a majority of his struggles wrapping around his inability to throw strikes. But at his best, Girton has shown some very promising high-profile stuff, headlined by his fastball that sits 94 to 95 and tops 97 miles an hour, with over 17 inches of induced vertical break, an excellent approach angle from over 6 feet of extension. The major issue has been the inconsistent shape of his secondary stuff that he struggled to get chases with, including a mid-80s slider that registered just a 22.9% chase rate in the 42nd percentile, and his mid-90s cutter registering a 28.2% chase rate in the 54th percentile among Division I pitchers, which would usually set off a red flag, but if you have watched and listened to our podcast, you may recall me talking about vertical and how it makes or breaks career. Pitch shape and command is a priority, leaving velocity as the added bonus. In this case, Girton's fastball has a VAA of negative 4.32, which is an ideal sector to avoid the barrel of the bat, which gives him a solid foundation to improve his secondary execution. A majority of these first-hand issues seem to come from controlling command, walking 16.3% of batters in 2024. There's a lot to be encouraged about with Girton, but it might take some time for him to find a consistent way to put away minor league hitters. It is expected at the pro level that he will be sent out as a reliever, so we will have a good amount of time to develop a more stable repertoire. Overall, I think this was a decent pick, but reliever upside at 22 years old with no substantial injury history really does seem odd to me. Most strikeout pitchers with great fastball shape are usually stretched out to be a starter, but frequent control and command issues with low floor stuff, the Mets probably will get good underslot value on this pick. There's tons of promising tools here that can be maximized as a potential major leaguer. With the 323rd overall pick, the Mets selected Nick Roselli, a second baseman from the University of Binghamton. Roselli is 21 years old, 5'10", 200 pounds, and as a left-handed bat, this kid is far from the typical second base hitting profile. With great pitch selection and recognition, Roselli landed in the top 10% in zone contact rate, zone swing rate, and chase rate among Division I hitters. He also has way more power for his size, with an average exit velocity and sustained percentiles ranging well above 105 miles an hour, also known as EV90s. With a quick leveled swing, Roselli does a lot of zone damage, pulling line drives and fly balls at a 53.8% rate and registering a 62.2% hard hit rate on 84 batted ball events in 2024. Regarding his quality of contact rates in the top 10% for Division I hitters, Roselli's balance against velocity, braking, and off-speed stuff also made him an outstanding situational hitter, driving in 104 runs in 520 career plate appearances at the collegiate level. The transition to minor league pitching is still unknown, with his strength and opponents questioning his draft stock to the middle rounds, but nonetheless, he still has a great foundation of hitting tools for a 5'10" frame. Now, defensively, Roselli is a sure-handed defender with decent range that could merit a move to left field with his solid arm strength. With all tools at a fluid floor, his offensive stealing definitely puts him over the top. And sort of as a fun fact, Roselli did grow up as a Mets fan and spend plenty of time playing prep ball at Citi Field. It's a good story to select a local kid, but it makes it even sweeter that his hitting ability could translate to the big leagues if he pans out. Despite the physical aspect and small frame, I do think this was quite a find in the 11th round. He's an undersized, loud bat with loads of power and contact upside. We'll find out real quick if his bat is up to the task, but it's a fantastic floor to put some stock into his development going forward. With the 353rd overall pick, the Mets selected Ethan Lanthier, a right-handed pitcher from the University of Kansas. Lanthier is 21 years old, 6'5", 230 pounds, and a two-pitch reliever with a late swiping motion. His fastball sits at 94 to 95 and tops 97 miles an hour, with over 15 inches of glove side run. Even though his approach angles aren't that great, along with his mid-80s sweeping action slider that registered in the top 5% in whiff and chase rates among Division I pitchers in 2024. He also has a work-in-progress changeup to possibly help tunnel his volatile fastball shape, but he has yet to throw it in games. The main key to Lanthier's success is his control that got better towards the tail end of 2024, but he has struggled from the stretch at times and allows way too many base runners to pretty much pull him out of the starting pitching role at the college level. But at 6'5", he's another draft prospect that you could see an uptick in velocity going forward to possibly help the fluidity of his fastball that sits at a volatile approach angle as said. It is more mechanical than developmental, but still possible given the reliever upside and swing and miss stuff. Overall, I think this was a good addition to the farm system. I do have some small concerns with how the overall pitch shape will play against minor league hitters, but there is a lot of chaseable stuff that he's proven capable enough to make pitches. But there is a lot of untapped skills to unlock here. With the 383rd overall pick, the Mets selected R.J. Girton, a right-handed pitcher from the University of Oregon. Girton is 22 years old, 6 foot, 195 pounds, and a 5-pitch starting pitcher. With an undersized frame but strong lower half, Girton does have a very promising assortment of weapons. With a fastball that sits at 93 to 94 and tops 97 miles an hour, and has over 20 inches of induced vertical break. He complements it with a sweeping action backdoor slider and a high 80s changeup with over 15 inches of vertical break. He harvests this extra movement with a high 80s cutter and a late dropping curveball with RPMs over 2600. After missing the entire season in 2023, Girton really struggled to miss bats this year, surrendering 16 home runs in 94.2 innings pitched, tending to leave a lot of breaking balls over the plate. Part of this had to do with his struggles to get chases and put away batters, landing in below average percentiles for all of his secondary pitches last season. Most scouts do believe that if he can put together a stronger sequence and improve his overall pitchability, Girton has solid upside to be a back-end starter at the major league level. Even though this pick was in the later rounds, I'm really not that big on this one. I just see a lot of red flags that probably won't translate to a high ceiling as a starting pitcher. There could be a transition to the bullpen if he struggles at the minor league level, but nonetheless, there is some promising tools here, but I just don't know how far that will take him. With the 413th overall pick, the Mets selected Tanner Witt, a right-handed pitcher from the University of Texas. Witt is 22 years old, 6'6", 230 pounds. Coming out of high school, this kid had first-round anticipation as a physical, hard-throwing reliever. But after his freshman year, he underwent Tommy John surgery in 2022. Ever since then, his velocity hasn't really regained form, with battling injuries along the way, only pitching 30 innings as a starter across his sophomore, junior, and senior year. And a few months ago, Witt underwent another procedure, cleaning up scarring tissue in his right elbow. Last registered, his fastball is sat at 91 to 92 and top 94 miles an hour, with over 17 inches of induced vertical break. But with great extension at 6'6", Witt's velo drop didn't really prevent him from his fastball whiff rate, chase rate, and called strike and whiff percentage, all landing in the top 15% among Division I pitchers in 2024. He also mixes in a curveball with over 300 RPMs and a low 80s changeup with extra fade. Although he has not been back to his normal self yet, Witt still has not lost his overall feel and pitch ability. He doesn't walk many batters, and his command of the zone is still well advanced. The main factor for him is obvious. He needs to stay on the field. And if he does, I believe that this could be a monstrous steal for the Mets farm system. To get a once first-round talent in the 14th round is really good. Is it possible he could command an overslot signing bonus? Maybe. But I personally think it's worth the flyer. Even though a lot has to go right for Witt for him to reach his once high ceiling, his development comes with a very high floor. To get this seasoned of a pitcher this late in the draft gets 0 complaints for me. Great upside pick. With the 443rd overall pick, the Mets selected Owen Woodward, a right-handed pitcher from the University of Houston. Woodward is 22 years old, 6'3", 200 pounds, and as a primary reliever, Woodward has great command of the strike zone and attacks hitters with 3+ pitches. His fastball sits at 94 to 95 and tops 96 miles an hour with extra rise that registered him in the top 5% in whiff rate, chase rate, and called strike and whiff percentage among Division I pitchers this season. He also has a high 80s slider with late arm cutting action, in which he registered the third most total chases with in 2024 at the collegiate level. His third weapon is a hard changeup in the low 90s that is mostly used to get right-handed hitters out. Although his season was cut short due to an elbow injury, some scouts put him on pace as a potential early round prospect before he got hurt. but that's really hard to say with reliever upside. So I do wonder if they might try his hand at starting with great control and command, but on the other hand, the injury concern might hold him back on that end. Either way, I think this was a really good value pick, great pitchability, plus stuff, repeatable mechanics, and a very solid floor for a 15th round pick. A real good add to the organizational depth chart. With the 473rd overall pick, the Mets selected Josh Blum, a right-handed pitcher out of the University of Southern California. Blum is 21 years old, 6'1", 195 pounds, and coming off a near spotless year as a reliever. With a late drop and drive motion, Blum relies on extra movement of all three of his pitches. His fastball sits at 92 to 93 and tops 96 miles an hour, with over 19 inches of induced vertical break and tons of glove side run. But his best pitch is his high 80s arm side slider with over 2,500 RPMs, which registered for the top 10% in chase rate, whiff rate, and called strike whiff percentage among Division I pitchers in 2024. He bridges these two weapons with a high 80s cutter that commands well across the bottom half of the strike zone. And with great control and command, Blum contact manages fairly well for someone who attacks batters as much as he does. It's very unclear if he will remain a reliever at the minor league level, but considering the fact that he never made a start as a collegiate pitcher, the capacity and ceiling is pretty much set if he were to pan out. I think that this was again a really solid pick. Riding high on a breakout year this late in the draft is a no-brainer. Blum is a very stable arm, good swing and miss stuff with plus command and control, and a very high floor for the 16th round. With the 503rd overall pick, the Mets selected Jacoby Long, an outfielder from the University of Miami. Long is 22 years old, 6'2", 200 pounds, and as an overall above average athlete, he has some really solid tools as an overall player. Offensively, he's a little bit more contact than power, as he landed in the top 5% in lowest strikeout rate, zone contact rate, and zone swing rate among all Division I hitters in 2024. With subpar quality of contact and average exit velocities, Long hits a lot of ground balls with a solid pull side. Although there are some red flags that might not play well at the pro level, his pitch recognition is a plus, posting an OPS above 750 against velocity, breaking and off-seed pitches this season. Defensively, Long's plus speed allows him to play center field fluently, as he has a plus arm that can move him to right field in the future, but played a majority of 2024 in center field. Overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this selection, but I do understand the developmental intrigue. He has a solid and strong frame as a plus athlete, but this is the type of flawed bat after 4 years of college ball that is just too overwhelming for me to overlook. It's a 17th round pick, so I don't mind the organizational depth, but this selection just seemed very different from the trend of position players the Mets took in this entire draft. With the 533rd overall pick, the Mets selected Jace Hampson, a right-handed pitcher out of Linwood High School in Washington. Hampson is 18 years old, 6'1", 175 pounds, and he throws a low 90s fastball and a split changeup in the high 70s. As a two-way player ranked as the 6th best in the state of Washington, Hampson's future is expected to be on the mound. It's not easy to get a clear judgment on this one because drafting high school pitchers is not only rare these days, but there isn't really much advanced information out there. But at a 6'1" frame, there is a lot of room for Hampson to develop more strength and add velocity. If he pans out, we may not see him at the higher levels for a long time at age 18, but even with the lack of info to break down, scouts really seem to like the upside of this kid, which is very bold for a high school pitcher, so it must count for something. I do like this pick as upside in general, lots of room to grow and potentially mold Hampson into a solid pitcher at the pro level. With the 536th overall pick, the Mets selected Frank Elissalt, a right-handed pitcher from the University of Nova Southeastern. Elissalt is 22 years old, 6'2", 210, and as a sophomore transfer from LaSalle, he's a very compact and athletic arm with a very repeatable motion, striking out over 25% of batters and walking very few in 194.2 innings pitched at the college level. His three-pitch mix is headlined by his fastball that sits 91 to 92 and tops 94 miles an hour, which landed him in the top 10% in whiff rate, chase rate, and called strike and whiff percentage among Division I pitchers in 2024. He tunnels it with a low 80s changeup, which scouts believe he has a very solid feel for. His third weapon is his low 80s slider with extra arm side break that is regularly used against left-handed hitters. He may not bring a lot of velocity to the table, but most of his success has come from attacking the lower third of the zone with his pitch ability and overall command. He also excels at going deep into games, which has been one of the main reasons why scouts have given him a back-end starter ceiling at the major league level. Long story short, this is a great value pick by the Mets. If you see some starter upside in the late rounds, it's a no-brainer to take. Very good organizational depth pick. With the 593rd overall pick and final selection of the draft, the Mets selected Adam Haight, a shortstop out of Cedar Park Christian High School in Washington. Haight is 18 years old, 6'2", 175 pounds, and as a two-way player, he was ranked in the top 100 draft prospects via MLB Pipeline. And for that reason, he is not expected to sign with the Mets and fulfill his commitment to Oregon State University. He's a toolsy player with a lot of upside out of high school, but it's extremely hard to believe a top 200 prospect will sign for 20th round slot money. Definitely the molding of an early round selection, but he's just not there yet. It only makes sense for him to invest in his own stock, but nonetheless, a great pick by the Mets to finish off this draft. So there you guys go. There is my full review of all 20 selections made by the Mets in the MLB Draft for 2024. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below of which ones were your favorite picks, which ones were your least favorite picks, and what takes you agree on and disagree on. Now, before we end this off, I do want to give a shout out to Twitter user Antonio U, who provided me with a lot of this advanced data on college pitchers, with most of the advanced data on pitch arsenals and hitting profiles. We all know how much I love advanced data, and if you guys enjoyed advanced data, make sure to go drop him a follow because he was very helpful in the making of this video. His links will also be in the description, so make sure to give him a follow and check out his content. But as for over here, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, put on those post notifications to not miss the live recording of the Mets Weekly podcast, mainly on Sundays and Thursdays following every single series of games. And also remember that we do have some big stuff planned for the trade deadline, which is on Tuesday, July 30th, with the Mets in a very pivotal spot going forward with roster construction. Also make sure to follow us on Twitter at Mets Weekly Pod, on TikTok at Mets Weekly, to not miss one of my co-hosts, Frank About Sports, post-game reactions after every single Mets game titled The Mets Frankly Postgame. All I can say is that this draft class was definitely the most deep and some of the best upside selected by the Mets in a long time. Stearns and Gross did a really good job addressing sustainable tools for an organization. Let's just hope that some of this young talent pans out in the future and continues the youth movement in Queens. And that's about it from me. Let's go Mets. We'll see you guys next time.